Go ahead and call this meeting to order. Yuma County Board of Supervisors, also sitting as Special Taxing District, January 18, 2023, 9 a.m. Board members will attend either in person, by telephone, or remotely via electronic conferencing. We're all here. Can we please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? Supervisor Lyons, can you please lead us?
Please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We'll go ahead and move on to call to the public. Call to the public is held for public benefit to allow individuals to address issues with the board's jurisdiction. Board members may not discuss items that are not specifically identified on the agenda. Therefore, pursuant to Arizona Revised Statute 38-431.01H, action taken as a result of public comment will be limited to directing staff to study the matter, responding to criticism, or scheduling the matter for further discussion and decision at a future date. Public comments may be made in person or submitted by email at publiccomment@yumacountyaz.gov. The email forms of public comments will be accepted until 8 a.m. the morning of the meeting. All public comments will be read out loud during the Yuma County Board of Supervisors meeting that starts at 9 a.m. Do we have any?
There's an email from Jeffrey Brand regarding the Foothills Park. He says, why is there no bike rack included in the design? The park is adjacent to a county bike route. Thank you for considering my input.
Thank you, Desiree. Just only one?
Yes, that's the only written
Okay.
comment.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
because we can't discuss those items, as they come up, let's just have you and the administrator discuss whether that needs to be a board item that we can talk about or whether it can be dealt with by just the staff. Okay, so we don't ignore some of those comments. If it's an issue that needs decision from us, just make sure that it gets in the agenda. If not, then deal with it and try to get it resolved. Okay.
Thank you. Ian?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, and good morning, members of the board. Ian McGahey, County Administrator. I'm here to present this plaque to former Chairman Tony Reyes in appreciation of his dedication of service and leadership to Yuma County. So, thank you,
A
sir.
rock would have been more appropriate. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Told him it wasn't a good idea to give you a gavel again, but
Let me take that. Thank you very much. And I already said how honored I was and how proud I was that you guys chose me to be the chairman for such a long time, because I think you could have said a year was like enough. But thank you very much for your support during that time. I really enjoyed it, and I've always said that part of the enjoyment of a chairman is to have everything run smoothly. Well, it was a tough time. It was a real difficult time. So, the way that all of you pulled together proved the point to me that it doesn't matter which party you belong to, as long as your mind is in the right place and your heart's in the right place, you'll do the right thing. And thank you very much. Thanks. Thank
Is that gavel really stuck in there?
Hopefully,
Make sure
it's It's stuck in here. You can't take it out.
Moving on to presentations, proclamations, and appointments. Any appointments?
No.
None? Presentation of the county line, item number 1. Go ahead.
Yuma County receives additional funding as construction for the Middle Mile Fiber Project begins. Cadets in training find out how well they can handle being pepper sprayed. And Yuma County Safety Division will be hosting a safety summit. We've got the details. These stories and more, this is your County Line. As construction for the much-needed broadband project begins, Yuma County was recently awarded an additional $6 million to support a network of wireless broadband towers. The cutting-edge mobile tower network will connect to Yuma County's middle-mile fiber network, currently under construction. The mobile tower network will enable the use of remote sensors, drones, satellites, artificial intelligence, also known as AgTech. Once the project is completed, residents will have access to fast, reliable, and affordable internet service.
During the pandemic, when so many of us were relying on the internet for education, business, and communication, it became painfully evident that there's a serious need to improve the quality and geographic accessibility of the internet in Yuma County. And this project does that by bringing quality, high-speed, reliable internet to underserved and unserved areas of the county.
We'll bring you updates on this major broadband project as progress continues to move forward. The Law Enforcement Training Academy stepped out of the classroom to get hands-on, while cadets in training experience what it was like to be pepper sprayed. After about 12 weeks of classroom work, cadets from several different agencies were ready to apply what they'd learned and put it to use in real-life scenarios. One by one, cadets exited their classroom to feel the effects of pepper spray and what it does to you in contact.
It's extremely important that they understand the other side of aspects of what's going on. You know, it's like a taser exposures. We want you to know what a taser exposure, because you might be struggling with the suspect as well, and taser goes off, you might get hit with the prong as well. You might get tased. We want you to know that you're still in the fight. You can still fight through all this.
The Academy is all hands-on from here as cadets move on to field problem tests. These include traffic stops, foot pursuits, integrity, and other problems that officers may experience in the field. The Academy is currently available twice per year and will be available 3 times per year once the new training facility, which will start construction in early spring, is complete. Yuma County is dedicated to safety and understands that work safety is an important part of everyday life. That's why Yuma County is hosting an all-day safety summit. The Yuma County Safety Division will host the summit on March 9th from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. at the Yuma County Main Library. This event aims to promote health and safety to all Yuma County and Superior Court employees, as well as our community.
This is a free event, and Arizona Division of Occupational Safety and Health is also hosting to promote this statewide. So this is an all statewide event, and we want to make sure that our county employees have the opportunity to be present and take opportunity for all the safety trainings available.
All participants will have the opportunity to attend various safety trainings conducted by safety professionals and network with safety vendors. For more information and to register, please visit yumacountyaz.gov. And remember, think safe, work safe, in order to go home safe.
I'm Elia Juarez, and this is your Library Update. The votes are in and the book has been chosen. Our One Book Yuma selection is ready for you to read. This year's One Book Yuma selection is A Dream Called Home by Reina Grande. You can pick up a copy of this book at any of our local libraries. Make sure that you grab that either in person as a paper book or on one of our platforms for ebooks. Then pencil it onto your calendars that Miss Grande will be here in Yuma for a discussion of the novel on March 1st. For information on One Book Yuma and any of our other great programs, make sure you visit our website at yumalibrary.org and follow us on social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, and YouTube.
Before we go, we'd like to give a shout out to multiple departments for their hard work on a solid waste cleanup project. A few weeks ago, Yuma County was recognized by the Arizona Department of Environmental Quality, or ADEQ. A representative from ADEQ awarded the Sheriff's Office, Public Works, and Development Services with a certificate for the Voluntary Environmental Stewardship Program Award. The award stems from the collaborative effort in the cleanup along the Colorado River. The Department of Development Services and the Sheriff's Office helped to arrange the event. Public Works provided heavy equipment to properly dispose of debris, and students from Yuma Catholic High School volunteered. 11 tons of illegal waste, 22 tires, and 4 appliances were collected. We'd like to thank everyone involved for keeping Yuma County beautiful. Thank you for joining us for this County Line. We'd like to know of any story ideas you may have. And if you're looking for stories we've covered in the past, log on to our website at yumacountyaz.gov/VOD. We'll see you for the next County Line.
Okay. Moving on to consent calendar. The following items listed under the consent agenda will be considered as a group and acted upon by one motion with no separate discussion unless a board member so requests. In that event, the item will be removed from the consent calendar for separate discussion and action.
Chairman, I have 3 items I'd like to talk about a little more.
All right.
Now, item number 6,
6,
item number 7, and item number 10.
7, and 10. 6, 7, and 10. Any other?
Nobody else wants any other items removed? I'll make a motion, we go ahead and approve items 1 through, what is it, 10? 11, with the exception of 6, 7, and 10.
There's a motion, and there's a second to approve items 1 through 11, with exception 6, 7, and 10. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item number 6, County Administration and Emergency Management.
Authorize the placement of portable restrooms in various
Restrooms.
locations within Yuma County along the United States and Mexican border, retroactive from December 2021. The question I have is not whether we should have or could have or done it, because it's been done. The question is this a method of recouping some of the costs? Is that what we're trying to do? Just make sure that we record the cost and have a way to, or find a way to get it paid back?
That's exactly right, Supervisor Reyes. This is a method that we're hopeful will help to, now that it would be officially a record of action by the Board of Supervisors, that it will allow us to recoup the funds. Right now, the funds we're anticipating to be close to $75,000 for the fiscal year for these restrooms. So county does have an interest in recouping those funds, and this is a method to do that.
Definitely, and I would more than gladly support the request for the repayment of those funds from the federal government. We should have been doing this from the beginning. So if nobody else, I just wanted to make sure that was the intent of the motion here, because it's retroactive to December 21st. I assume that if we're trying that we have spent from that period of time when we acted to now.
We started.
That's correct. Yes, sir.
Any other comments?
Any other questions? If not, I'll make a motion, we accept, we approve item number 6 as presented.
I'll second that.
There's a motion and a second to approve item number 6 as presented. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item number 7, and I also have a speaker card for item number 7, consent agenda.
All right. Normally we have to open before we get a speaker card, but
That'll be all.
item number 7
Yeah.
is to accept coronavirus state and local fund fiscal recovery funds in the amount of $6 million for agriculture air broadband. Authorize the county administrator to sign the grant agreement between the state of Arizona and the governor in Yuma County, effective December 30th through April 2024, and authorize the Office of Management and Budget to establish budget authority and financial services to establish a new fund number as needed. This is an item that I'll begin by acknowledging and thanking Supervisor Lyons for keeping pressure on the governor's office for explaining to them just how important this was. I think we've begun the whole process of broadband as in part motivated by the fact that there was a need for this kind of system out to help the agricultural fields. I know Paul Brinkley is here. Byerly is here. So, I just wanted to start by saying that, and then ask a few questions, because I think I go back to the old expression I use normally about the road to hell is paved with good intentions. This is a great intention. This is something that I'm sure is going to make Yuma County's agriculture not just happy, but one of the most advanced systems. It's going to have one of the most advanced agricultural systems in the world. But as we experienced during the process with Halo, there's a lot of local people here that need to be included in the process. And I just wanted to make sure that I ask a few questions. The first one is, this is not an additional contract for Halo. This is a new $6 million tower-based system that is separate. Is that correct?
That is correct, Supervisor Reyes. This is a separate project. Will it be a separate RFP? Totally
So that's what I want next.
And that we haven't received that funds.
Oh, no.
No,
No, it was
so-
Santa
so-
Claus. It was just,
So
government was doing
just to
Santa
make
Claus.
sure, we
Yeah.
haven't received those funds.
Yeah, no. And I wanted to make sure that we follow the procedure as clearly, as transparent as possible from the beginning. I think that last time we did it based on goodwill, and we went through the process of selection and so on and so forth. I just want the process to begin early enough. By when we receive the grant and accept it and create a what do you call it, a fund, authorize a fund to establish it. It immediately should begin a process of the selection process. It takes some time, but the selection process should be as open to the public, as clear to the public. I like the local people to know that this isn't in any way, shape, or form something that we want to keep away from our locals. We've always supported a lot of the local suppliers of services. This one, I think, can, if worked correctly, can be followed through, and maybe we end up with a couple of local providers that we may be able to handle the contract to. But the main part about this is that the process needs to be followed to the letter, because I don't want this good project to be involved in some sort of controversial issue about us getting the money and route it in any way, shape, or form. So I just wanted to make that point.
All right.
Anything else?
Well, since item number 7 it is open. Barry Olson?
Good morning, Barry Olson, 101 East 2nd Street in Yuma. Those of you on the board are aware that I represent a local business, Hilo Electronics. It's been in the business of providing wireless and broadband for quite a number of years. We employ a substantial number of individuals in the Yuma area. And we'd like to commend the county for procuring this funding, which is very needed to expand wireless and broadband in the rural areas of Yuma to serve the agricultural needs and those residents that live in the rural areas. We're also pleased that it will be an RFP through bidding and a separate process than the broadband. One thing, and going back to Supervisor Reyes's comment about the road traveled, one thing that we learned from the broadband project is on that project, we understood the county's rationale in putting together a committee to review those proposals. The problem with that is there wasn't very much county input. The individual from the county that was put on that committee is no longer here. So the problem that's created is there's questions that have come up. County staff's been great to work with, but with the departure of the individual from the county that was on that committee to answer questions, the county staff's been reliant upon your contractor, ALLO, to get questions answered. So we've been going back and forth on that. I don't really think that's the ideal process when you have government funds. So I would suggest that in the next round on the wireless, that much more staff be involved so that when questions come up, county staff can answer those questions. And if any county staff member retires, departs, transferred, whatever it might be, that there is continuity so that the board, the county, and the public are aware and are not dependent upon a contractor to provide answers to those questions. We look forward to this project. It's definitely needed. And we'd also request that as part of this, that with the broadband project, one of the things is it was sort of a general RFP, and I had talked to some of you about my concerns with that. For this project, I think it would be much better if the county were to identify through the process where these towers are to be located, how it's to be coordinated with the broadband, so those individuals and businesses that are bidding on this have a much better idea of what the county's expecting, where it's to go, so that everybody has the same information and there's much more detail as to what the county needs for this expansion of wireless and broadband in the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Barry. Comments will certainly be taken.
Okay, well, if there's no questions, no comments, again, thanking you, Jonathan, Mr. Lyons, for, basically getting this right at the end of the year. I'll make a motion, we accept the coronavirus state and local fiscal recovery funds in the amount of $6 million for the agriculture area broadband, authorize the county administrator to sign a grant agreement between the state of Arizona and the office of the governor to be effective December 30th. And it will go from December 30th, 2022 through April 12, 2024, and authorize the Office of Management and Budget to establish budget authority and financial services to establish a new fund number as needed. One last question before we go this. Why is it April 12, 2024? Is there some reason to that?
That's when the
when it
broadband has
expires?
to be done.
Yeah, we believe that's a reasonable time for this project to be implemented. Unlike the broadband middle mile network, which involves a lot of installation and permitting, these towers, as I understand it, are essentially self-contained units, and they won't require the amount of time and preparation and construction and permitting to achieve the project. So, working with the governor's office, that was the timeline that we felt was reasonable, and Mr. Brearley was helpful in constructing that proposal and felt it was a suitable timeline.
The reason I mentioned this is because when I first read it, I know how long things take to do when we do them. And a year and 3 months or a year and 4 months was, I don't know why, it was self-limiting. I thought it was a deadline that where you have to use the funds by that date. Because you may commit those funds by that date, but you may not finish the actual project before that. So I would say that when you do that, when you set a deadline that is short, you're actually putting yourself in a situation where you may have to ask for an extension. I don't have a problem with it right now, but I think things don't move that fast. Hopefully this one moves fast enough, but April 24 seemed to me, I was trying to search for an answer why it was specifically April 2024, because normally we get a grant. Yeah, it's a yearly grant, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. This one was a year and 4 months. So kind of a little bit, a year and 4 months. But if you guys feel you can handle it, we'll leave it like that. I mean, that's the way the governor's office wanted it, so there must be a reason.
I'm not sure if there's any going back to adjust that date, but I'm confident we'll get the project done in that time frame.
Chairman,
All right.
just a quick question, too, and
There's
Paul
a
may be
question.
able to answer. Do you have any idea on tower placement yet?
You want,
Well, it's discussion. You have a motion.
go ahead. So
I'm just curious more on that one.
Yeah, thank you. Paul Brierley with the Yuma Center of Excellence for Desert Agriculture. And we're really excited about this addition to the Middle Mile project. Thank you, Supervisor Lyons, for getting that funding here. It'll need to be engineered.
Point out
Yeah.
something. I would not have been able to execute and deliver such an amazing request without the assistance of Paul putting together the actual verbiage that I was able to deliver. So very instrumental as far as making this happen. And then we had a lot of different people working over the weekend, including Ian, to make sure that this happened. It was during the New Year's evening that everybody was working on New Year's Eve to make sure that this got done. So Paul was working on this and Ian was working on this, and they both were texting me back while I was in the desert with my family, confirming that it was completed. So a big team effort.
thank you.
I was very worried while I was in Vegas waiting for it. Really worried.
So it'll need to be engineered exactly how to best get coverage across the agricultural areas. And the idea is, I like the tagline that a tractor can't drag fiber, right? So you need this wireless coverage. The general theory, though, will be to get it as close as possible to the middle mile network, because these towers need to be linked to the middle mile network with fiber. And frankly, it was the middle mile network's existence that allowed this to be feasible, because the towers can be placed where there's not a very long need for fiber connection to the middle mile. So we do have just a mock-up of where they might be. And when you look at the satellite image of where farm fields are, it's very clear what needs to be covered. So starting down near San Luis and up through and across out east. But that'll be the basic tenet, is to get coverage and stay as close as possible to the middle mile fiber. So it doesn't take much to connect. The part of the proposal is that the irrigation districts had agreed to provide right-of-way and for placement of these towers where appropriate.
It was critical that all the ag partners came together,
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, and Paul was instrumental in making sure that happened.
So don't have exact locations, that'll be up to engineers, but the basic thing will be to spread them out through that green area in the satellite image as close as possible to the middle mile network.
Thanks, Paul. Thank you. And
Right.
thanks for all your work.
You bet.
So there's a motion and do I have a second?
Mr. Chairman, just so to answer the question on the April 14, 2024, that was put in the grant agreement by the state, I believe. So it wasn't self-imposed.
You came on.
Is there a second?
Oh, I seconded it.
Oh, you
Yeah.
seconded?
Yeah.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Let's open up item number 10, Free Library District, accept the donation from the Ruth E. Miller Trust estate liquidation in the amount of $815,000.
We, back some time ago, before this young bucks were in the board, we sort of made it a policy that every time somebody made a donation to the library, we would recognize it publicly.
Right.
It is something that, shouldn't go unnoticed. And in this particular case, it's a very large donation. It's a liquidation of state, but, it's a Ruth E. Miller. I'm sure the family, I'm sure that this is part of her legacy. So I just wanted to publicly thank I guess in this particular case, Mrs. Miller or the family, and the family, and it's a substantial grant. I hope, and it does say in the information that's given to us that we would find a way to basically honor her legacy. Are we looking at a section of the library? Are we looking at building something with it? Are we looking at some?
We've been receiving funds from the Ruth E. Miller Trust for probably the past 20 years. Ruth Miller was a lab tech back when it was Parkview Hospital into YRMC. She passed in about 1999, and the library was receiving funds from her trust for probably the past 20 years, about $20,000, $25,000 each year. In her will, it stipulated that the funds would be used for educational and books for adults and children, educational programs, sorry, for adults and children. And then we didn't see any funds, so we thought, the trust must have dried up. And then last year we heard that her trustee had passed and that her estate was going to be finalized and distributed. So the library was to receive half of the funds and PBS 8 was to receive the other half of the funds. So we're blessed that she, believed in the library, the freedom to read, and has provided funds. We are looking at some additional programs that we can use her funds for. We're going to the Tucson Festival of the Books in March as a couple of staff to maybe see if there's some more authors that we can bring in. We'll do some additional programming during summer reading for the children. So those are some of the things that we're looking at.
All right, so I did read that it was for the purchase of adult and children's books. So I knew that was going to happen, but I still kind of believe that it's the kind of mark it leaves. I mean, I remember getting a grant, a smaller grant, $15,000, $20,000 donation, and we talked about that. To me, this is $800,000. You may be wise in some ways to sort of set it aside, put it in, and draw some interest from it, sort of like a trust. The library, if the library could possibly have a trust with donated funds, instead of letting it slowly whittle away into nothing, to set up a trust, and from the revenue of that trust, this is like enough amount, draw every year and do that, and call it the Ruth E. Miller, event or whatever. I think if I was her, I would appreciate that.
Yeah.
More than the fact that, we're done with the distribution and now you got nearly $1 million and it's going to be done.
And there's no way we could spend it, like that.
So, yeah, if you could look into that.
I think Ian, or with Lisa, with some recommendations that
Mhm.
you come up with, and then we can go look at them and.
Yeah, it's
And approve.
difficult to put together $1 million for a trust, and this is a very good start. $815,000. It's enough right now, given the market conditions, that you can
Yeah.
actually spend $15,000-$20,000 worth of interest, and it would always be there.
Right, right, absolutely.
We'll use it wisely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa.
Okay, so I'll end the motion.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, go
Oh,
ahead.
Mr. Chairman? Mr. Riley? Sorry, it's not on this topic. Oh, okay. Okay, well, he'll make a motion, I'll second it.
Make a motion, yeah.
There's
The
a
motion
motion
to
and a
approve
second
item
to approve item number
10
10 as presented. All
Thank
those
you,
in
Rick.
favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. And
You wanna say
we
something?
still have the open to the call to the public open, so go ahead, Paul. You might need to leave, so come on.
Chairman, just a reminder, this will be an open call to the public because you passed the last item, so there'll be
Yeah, we
limited
can
discussion,
discuss
but
it
comments
then.
are
Yeah.
welcomed.
Sure, and one other thing I should have said, besides thanking you all for the support of broadband and certainly Ian's work, just to set expectations right, we anticipate this, for this tower network to cover the whole valley, it would be a cost of $10 to $15 million. That was the request. The governor's office gave $6 million, so that's about half of it. So just to set expectations right, we don't have the funding yet to completely cover.
Which again goes back to why set it up for the April 2024. But if
Thanks.
the governor, if the people that gave it to us set that deadline, well, we'll use their $6 million first.
Mr. Chairman, there was no more money.
Thank you, Paul.
But thank you for your time. and support.
Yes, so we'll get this done and.
Absolutely.
Use your matching funds. Thank you, Mr. President.
You bet. Thank you, guys.
I didn't leave the Capitol until I knew that.
Moving on to
Something.
legislative issues, item number 1. Discussion and possible action regarding state and federal legislative updates, which may include international issues, state statutes of bills affecting Yuma County, timelines and compositions of legislature and legislative strategies and priorities.
Mr. Chairman, Alejandro Figueroa, Economic Development and Intergovernmental Affairs Director. I'll be presenting the update to you today. I'm sorry. On Monday, January 9th, the Arizona Legislature celebrated the opening of the first regular session of its 56th legislature. After representatives and state senators were sworn in, Representative Toma officially elevated to the position of House Speaker and Senator Peterson to President of the Senate. Governor Katie Hobbs ascended to the podium to give her first annual State of the State speech. It was a wide-ranging speech where the governor expressed the following priorities: investing in public education, tackling affordable housing, lowering costs for Arizonans, immigration, and securing Arizona's water future. On the afternoon of January 13, Governor Hobbs released her first executive budget. The $17.1 billion proposed budget had the following recommendations: $75 million for local match support for rural counties and municipalities for federal transportation and broadband grants. That could probably help Yuma County. $14 million for probation officer salary adjustments. $250 million deposited into the state's rainy day fund. $200 million for one-time state employee retention payments. $150 million deposited into the housing trust fund. $90 million in various tax changes, including exempting infant diapers and feminine hygiene products, as had been proposed by Coconino County at the CSA meeting in October of last year. The governor's plans also continues to shift $8.5 million to Maricopa and Pima counties to cover a portion of the state's obligation to the Arizona Department of Juvenile Corrections. And additionally, both the executive and the JLBC baseline recommended increases in mandatory county contributions to the state's long-term care system. It must be pointed out that this proposal is likely not going to be the last thing we see as far as the budget. There will be a lot of going back and forth between the state legislature, which is led by the Republicans, and the governor's office, obviously Democrat. So on the next slide here, I have the timeline. Obviously, we're looking at a sign day. I don't know how to say it in Latin. Sign die. Sunday is scheduled to happen or take place on April 18th. That will hardly be the case. Apparently, there's probably going to be, we're probably going to look at a very long session this year as well. The House of Representatives dropped 503 bills, 53 memorials and resolutions. In the next week or so, we expect to see more bills from the Senate as they reach the introset deadline on January 23rd. And just as a quick update on Yuma County's priorities of the biosolids, county staff continues to work with ADEQ and the State Land Department as they go through their own transition internally. New directors are coming into those agencies, so we're making the calls and the meetings that we need to establish that relationship and continue working on our priority as far as biosolids go. Mr. Chairman, you want to keep going, or is there anything you want me to ask or look into the budget?
Go ahead. Go.
So the U.S. Congress has, both the Senate and the House, the House is still working on assigning a committee to the reps. They took a while to select a House Speaker, but the Senate has already done so, and I've listed out the committees where Senator Kristen Sinema will be serving: Committee on Banking, Housing, and Urban Affairs, Commerce, Science, and Transportation, Homeland Security and Government Affairs, and Veteran Affairs as well. Senator Mark Kelly will be serving on the Armed Services Committee, Energy and Natural Resources, Environment and Public Works, and Joint Economic Committee. This is just as we prepare for our trip to the NACO conference, so that we're aware of where they'll be serving and what their influence will be within the Senate. We're hoping as soon as I get the assignments for the House, I'll be sharing those with you as well. On the international and border affairs front, as you know, on January 10th, a bipartisan group of 8 U.S. senators visited Yuma County to explore parts of our shared border with Mexico to better understand the current situation. The bipartisan group, led by Senator Sinema and Senator Cornyn from Texas, which also included Senator Kelly, is currently working on potential pathways for a much-needed comprehensive immigration reform. On January 9th and 10th, the leaders of Canada, Mexico, and the U.S. came together in Mexico City for the North American Leaders Summit. The leaders committed to deepen our economic cooperation, promote investment, and reinforce competitiveness. They also committed to build clean energy economies, combat arms and drug trafficking, as well as trafficking of people, share information and develop public policies to protect our countries against current and future health crises, and finally, reaffirm their commitment to work together to achieve safe, orderly, and humane migration in the region. That would be my presentation for the first item. Mr. Chairman, would you like me to keep going to the next item on the agenda?
Go ahead, Alejandro. Is this part of what when we go to NACO? Is it going to be, or are we going to?
This is the federal priorities I'm going to present to you right now. Yeah, that's the draft. That's a proposal that we've included on your packet. All right. There are six proposals or legislative priorities that we're going to look into here. The first 5, we've seen them the last couple of years. We've made some progress, but not what we would like to see. So we're asking the U.S. Congress and the federal government to continue to fund payment in lieu of taxes, PLT, but to make it permanent instead of renewing it every year or every 3 years.
A question, Jim. On this, there was a fund set up. I know we approved the transfer of some funds the first year. Mm-hmm. They were supposed to build, not build, but they were supposed to set up sort of a clearinghouse of information for this. Have they done anything that we can tap into for support? I mean, like, have they worked on the numbers? Have they done studies yet?
Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Reyes, as far as I understand, they have not yet created the center. The deadline was for the states was January 31st, the end of this month, to send the money in to NACO, and then they'll start, I guess, hiring and building the center itself. So we're probably not going to see anything from them until,
Well,
the
it's
end
going
of
to
the
be
year.
the same thing. We're going to go in there and say, please fund PILT, try to fund it on a more consistent basis, but we don't have anything new other than the fact that it makes up a certain percentage of the funds, general funds, that we use for, and everybody understands that we're talking about the fact that Yuma County has 9, 10, 12, 11% maybe of private lands, and the rest of it is either federal, state, or one of the federal agencies, BLM or reclamation, or it's either that or a proving grounds or a range, or I mean, Yuma County especially, I think, suffers from the fact that we cannot derive revenues, income tax, property tax revenues from. We can only derive them from very little private land is available. I guess we need to make that statement over and over again. But it applies a lot. It's very difficult to make that statement to people in Pennsylvania or in Ohio or some of those places that are highly urban and have very little federal land.
Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Reyes, the latest data I have is that 8.8% of our county is private taxable land. 85% of it's federal, and we get, last year we got $3.9 million, which represents 3.6% of our county's general fund revenues. So yeah, it's something. It's not a lot, but it does help pay for at least 51 full-time employees at the county.
Mm-hmm.
The second one is restoring the state criminal alien assistance program, and I want to mention that I got the help from several other agencies within the county to update the priorities, including the sheriff's department, county attorney's office, and several others. So we're urging Congress to fully reimburse states, counties, and cities for the cost of housing criminal aliens in county jail. We've spent for fiscal year 2021-2022, Yuma County's costs have been $1,045,000 based on housing 128 prisoners for 7,693 days. As of right now, the county has received $0 in federal reimbursement for that expense. That's not including what the county spends on healthcare costs for these individuals as well. Third one is enacting federal legislation to restore health benefits for pretrial individuals. Again, this has been something that the county has been looking into for some years now. The legislation that we were advocating for last year didn't go through, although it received bipartisan support. So according to NACO, they're thinking it might be reintroduced at some point in this new Congress, I'm sorry. So we're hoping to be able to support that when they actually create a bill and provide a number to it. Number 4, securing federal funding for the permanent relocation of the Yuma County Fairgrounds. And I know Vice Chairman Lyons has been working diligently on this. We are going to keep, asking Congress to help us fund the relocation of the Yuma County Fairgrounds. We want to thank MCAS for providing the latest data on their economic impact, which is more than $580 million a year to Yuma County. That's only the direct impact of $580 million that MCAS has on this region.
Mr. Chairman?
Go
ahead. Alejandro, few people are aware of the fact that there was a lands bill that was run last session in Congress, and they actually changed ownership from Bureau of Reclamation to MCAS Department of the Navy, for the remainder of the land surrounding surrounding the fairgrounds. So now the direct landlord to the fairgrounds is MCAS, Department of the Navy.
And thank you for that. And I do want to make a point about the way we're stating some of this stuff. I think we're missing the opportunity to state the human factor here. The fact that we'll have lawsuits in hundreds of millions of dollars, the loss of operation, the loss of reputation. Where's the loss of life in here? The main driver to this should be, look, we're putting people in danger there. If something happens, there's going to be death. That's where the lawsuit will come from. But the point that I'm making is, in all this presentation, we talk about the economic impact, we talk about the possible impact, economic impact of this, but in reality, it is a very dangerous place to put people in. Because if something happens, it means, well, something happens, it means some people lost their lives. I think we need to start off by saying a crash or a similar incident impact the parents could result in loss of life. You know, and reputation, I don't know, reputation is fine. I mean, I get it. I mean, you know, if you have an accident someplace, all of a sudden people say, well, that's accident prone or whatever. But in reality, to me, the main driver for that move is that every time you see thousands of people in there in the flight path, or the lighting system that go, or the rides that go up in there, and I'm sure it impacts the operation of the Marine Corps Air Station base. In some ways, they probably have to reroute or do something those days, because you certainly don't want, the possibility of something happening in there. The most tragic situation could be that we could have an accident that costs lives in there. I think we need to emphasize that somewhere in there. Probably on top of the list should be the possible loss of life.
Well, and just one comment on the for the fairgrounds, is that, whoever decides where it's going to be, they got to be realistic. I mean, if it's going to cost $100 million or over $100 million, that's a lot of money, and it's just going to take too long to do that. There were several proposals out there. I mean, that land was basically, free in certain areas, so they got to come to an agreement and really look into what's realistic, because the more it's going to cost, the longer it's going to sit there. I mean, and if the county is thinking of putting any money, I mean, I'd rather see that money. I mean, that amount of money, I'd rather see it going to roads than a piece of land that it's going to cost us. Then, well, there's other lands that are being proposed for free, or joint.
I think that at some particular point, this is going to become an issue of a federal state issue anyway. I mean, we were talking about the fact that Yuma County only has 8.8% private land. Why would we want to take a chunk of that to put, the fair in? Why wouldn't we just simply talk to the federal government and say, you have large chunks of land in remote locations? Well, not remote locations, but at least not in the middle of the city, Yuma or Somerton or San Luis or Welton, where we could put this without the risk of having, overflights, flight over there, or there's scratches. I think we ought to look at a piece of property where we can move in this, and basically the property would be free and the move would be paid by a certain combination of,
grants
or state funds or federal funds or Department of the Defense funds. I think that it behooves everyone to have that fair not happen in that location. And if it's not going to happen in that location, then the location where it should go to is another location that doesn't cost people, and it's removed far away but close enough so that it's far away from development and it's close enough for people to go to without having to drive hours or too many minutes. We have a committee, don't we? We have a fair relocation committee.
Yes, but Mr. Chairman, that's part of the Fair Board. They have their own Fair Relocation Committee.
Okay, well, then that means they're not going to ask for anything, Chairman.
Yeah, right.
Well,
We don't have anybody there, so.
the longer this
Mr. Chairman,
takes,
just to, I've met with them a couple of times over the last couple of weeks to look at what the immediate plans might be. After I met with the 2-star that controls Marine Installation West and Colonel Dudick, they both agreed that immediately to move it out of the clear zone was acceptable, to come in behind the Air Force Hill, because nothing would exceed that limit in that area. Everybody was amenable to that. Then met with the fairgrounds to start looking at costs. I've been working with Ian, with Josh, and engineering and development services. I'm going to be a little bit more involved in that so that we can expedite some of those challenges and processes. And also working with the mayor of the city of Yuma to kind of look and see what else we might be able to eliminate. The Fair Board has also indicated that they are willing to consider putting in some of their resources to be able to complete the project, so that we are,
they didn't have any.
so that we're exchanging, well, and it may be a loan or something like that, that they can take care of over 5, 10, 15, 20-year period. But so that what we are doing is replacing like for like and not providing a Taj Mahal on top of the existing like conditions. So we're proceeding cautiously. I'm optimistic that we're heading in the right direction, and we may have additional discussions as a board, but I think we're heading in the right direction. Ian?
Okay.
I agree. I think we're heading in the right direction. I don't know if Deputy Administrator Josh.
Make sure it's close to the broadband.
Add anything to that?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I don't have much to add other than what Supervisor Lyons mentioned. I'm optimistic as well that we can at least get them out of that clear zone with this money we do currently have. It's just kind of tempering the wants versus the needs at this point.
Well, and the operation tempo is going to do nothing but continue to increase out there, especially with things going on around the world as they are. Yuma is going to be probably one of the premier bases, I think, for training for all countries. So the quicker we can get this done, the better.
We are.
They've already started, haven't they?
Yeah, we've started. We're in the process of design, Mr. Chairman, and we'll come back to some cost analysis over the next couple of weeks, and to look and see how we can expedite this, and projecting, maybe a year and a half roughly, to be able to have that completion. That met with
to move them out
to move them onto the side
to the
as
side.
a temporary long-term relocation until we're able to secure additional funding. It's not the permanent solution, it's a temporary long-term, while we again ask the federal government to assist in this.
All right, Alejandro, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So moving on to number 5, supporting agricultural labor reform. Yuma County urges Congress to take up agricultural labor reform legislation as a means of improving the H-2A farm worker program. We continue to ask Congress to remove the 3-year visa cap and provide sufficient visas for full-time agricultural workers, specifically, obviously, for Yuma County.
Let me ask you a question. Is it going to take congressional reform to actually move up the number of visas, or is it an executive decision? Is it congressional?
Congressional.
Okay, so it's going to take congressional reform or congressional action, legislative action. Maybe we ought to get the word reform out of there. It seems like every time we say immigration reform, it drives people to different places.
I know.
So maybe we ought to use another word like legislative action or something, because reform sort of implies that you have to change everything. And I think that what we're calling for is to actually increase the number of visas and make it easier, make it simpler. We're not really asking them, I think, to reform the system. We're asking to amplify the system, to maximize the system, to provide us more, to provide us faster pathways. But if it takes Congress, I think that we ought to stop using the word reform. It seems like a bad word. Every time I say reform, somebody winces. So, just the wording there is probably what I would say, that we'll go ahead. Yuma County urges Congress to take up agricultural labor legislation as a means of improving the H-2 farm worker. Just don't use the word reform unless you want to have them draw lines on it. Enhancement?
We're also asking to split the proposed 20,000, previously proposed 20,000 visas 50-50 with the dairy industry, which...
What, are you asking for that, or are you asking for them?
We're asking for them to stop
Okay.
We're asking them to not split it 50-50 with the dairy industry.
Yes.
Correct.
Okay.
Aren't we also asking for a longer time period?
Right, we're
Three.
removing the year cap. 3-year visa cap, yes.
Okay, so we're asking for them to remove the 3-year visa cap, to
Not share
no, not
50-50.
share with the dairy industry, which means enhance it, increase it.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Excuse me. Okay, I don't see much. I mean, look, if we get into the limitations of distance from the border, I mean, it's also it gets complicated. The H-2A visas are really good tools, but they have their limits. So if we wanted to get into a discussion about, where they stay, for example, if you work beyond 50 miles, or I don't remember, it used to be 50 miles.
Mr. Chairman, it was, the last proposed distance was 75 miles. 75 miles. And that was the petition from the ag harvest companies that were working with the individuals, because the individuals signing contracts who lived within that 75-mile limit wanted to be able to return home.
Yes.
They did not want to be forced to stay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well,
But that's still in place.
A little.
Correct, that's still in place.
I don't know. I think some of you supervisors were here when we had a discussion about labor camps and how the county is really powerless to implement any restrictions, any electrical restrictions or plumbing restrictions on anything that's agricultural related. I don't know if you were there when we had this conversation with Mr. Ed King.
I think it has to be zone agricultural.
No?
Oh,
zone agriculture,
yeah, it can't be in the middle of the city, not if it's an existing hotel, the
there's
city,
regulations
the
inside
city,
there.
the
That area
code's
south
still
of
in
County
play.
14.
Yeah,
Put
that
in.
was agricultural zone
Well, anyway,
agriculture.
the bottom line is he may take certain changes in the law. And if we're going to be asking for them to make changes in the law, we may want to be sort of put it in an explanation. These are the changes that we need or help us, whether it's to increase the range of 75 to 100, whatever. If we don't want to mess with it and we just want to say, well, we want more visas and less restricted visas, longer time visas and more visas, then we need to focus on that. It may be too much to ask for them to reform the legislature, but to change it, to increase the numbers and to increase the time may be something that we can just pursue and say this will benefit us. If you don't share it, if you have 40,000 or 20,000, please don't make us share it. Do we have a census? Do we have a census of farm workers? How many farm workers have a H-2A visa in Yuma County? Yeah. How many the farm workers?
Whatever the maximum is, I'm sure that's what we have.
That's a good question for
It's a
any of the
question, because
senators.
if we're asking for them to increase the number, we should be able to say, look, we have 20. The farmers or ranchers in Yuma County need, 25,000 or 20,000 at least, and you're providing us with 10,000 for the whole. This is for the whole country, right?
Dairy and for agriculture.
Mr. Chairman, to Tony's point, while I had Ranking Member Comer, who I don't remember his new assignment, and several of the his caucus members here, I gave them a tour not only of the border but of our agricultural institutions. Pointed out all of our assets in place. Spoke to him specifically about the need to augment those numbers in order to be able to deliver this product, and they were amenable. And those were some of those people who previously were not, but being able to see it, that was their first visit here. I've had the opportunity to have over 40 members of Congress in the last 6 to 8 months, and those visits continue, but they understand what our challenges are and that we are using E-Verify here in Yuma, Arizona, and that we are abiding by that law
religiously,
while in other areas of the state, in other areas of the country don't necessarily do that, but that we here abide by the E-Verify and the current laws that are in place. So they were appreciative of that and understood what our challenges were as I asked them to consider that for Yuma.
All I want to do with this particular item is I want us to pursue this item. I just want some numbers to back it up. I like some numbers to back it up. If you could find out for me how many farmers cross the border with H-2A visas, how many farm workers are needed in the area, we will be a little bit better prepared to hand. If we end up with a situation where farmers want 3,000 visas and they have 3,500 available, then we don't want to, just pursue that and then be faced with that situation. But if we have a situation where farmers here need 5,000 visas, but they can only process 3,000 because it's a lengthy process, they keep losing people every 3 years. I personally like to be able to make the argument based on some of the numbers, and where the numbers are is where I'm a little.
Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Reyes, this item came, the wording comes from the Arizona Farm Bureau Government Affairs Department. They have been going through some transition. It's been not easy to get the latest data from them, right? But I will keep trying, and I will do my best to give you as many details as I can on the data, on the numbers.
I'll bring it.
And just
right.
And just a comment on this, when I go to NACO on the agricultural committee, we always talk about this. It's the same subject, and we're not the only ones facing this problem. It's the dairy farmers up in North Carolina, South Carolina, and meat packers. They're all facing the same issues that we are in a different aspect of farming, but it's the same issue. So we can take them, all the H-2A farm workers, to Washington, and they ain't gonna make a difference if not every state or really Congress takes it up on it, or the senators, because we've been taking this for the last 6 years, 7 years.
Yeah, but it's worked a little. I think they have increased them, aren't they?
No,
Not at all?
no, not at all. No, they won't even go with the 75 mile.
75-mile
limit.
Mm-mm.
So, and if you got H-2A workers here, you got to build a housing unit for them, even if they don't use it.
Mhm.
Mr. Chairman?
And there are a lot of them empty.
The demand that was placed upon agreeing to that 75-mile limit was complete security of the border. And because that was not able to be achieved, many of the members of Congress didn't sign on to that 75-mile limit. And all of the ag production companies here in Yuma were hurt by that. And they had been petitioning those congressmen specifically to accept that. But there are some prerequisites in their mind first.
And defining complete security of the border has been a task for
Yeah.
the last 40 years of my political life. And it's defined differently by every administration.
I agree.
Yeah. All right, so continue.
Number 6, it's supporting comprehensive immigration reform, as former Chairman Supervisor Reyes now urged. I don't know, I'm sorry.
We use the former.
Former.
I'm making the country
Sure, Supervisor Chairman Reyes asked me to do last year. Yuma County now urges the U.S. Congress to enact comprehensive immigration reform. This might have some overlap on other items on our, priorities, but it is worth mentioning, and I've listed several talking points for you to review and consider.
Okay, one more thing. In this one, we should include a point, what you call it, a point there about the cost and reimbursement, because we talk about this a lot. We talk about the problems, the failed immigration policy. We talk the number of asylum seekers. We talk about the project increase, strain the ability. But we're not saying in here we want to get repaid. If you guys ain't going to solve the problem, at least pay us.
Yeah.
When we go there and talk about this, you don't want to just talk about the fact that immigration reform is needed because of this human factors. We want to talk about the fact, look, it's costing us money. We keep saying it's a federal thing, but we keep spending the money on it. So if we couldn't get anything, at least we get them to agree that they have to repay us while they fix the problem. That's why we had an item in the agenda about toilets. And I think that this is, in my opinion, we've been extremely lucky that we haven't had this issue yet appear in the city streets of Somerton or San Luis. I mean, the fact is that,
Thank you,
as far as I'm
Amanda.
concerned, the mayor of Yuma, sort of Doug, talked about the border problem being his problem. I think the moment they started crossing in Algodones became his problem, real problem, his problem. And I think that, the people in Somerton, the people in San Luis, well, the emergency systems feel the issue, but the regular resident doesn't see, like, the border patrol running behind people, going across their land. They haven't seen people walking in the street that don't have any place to go yet. But the fact is, if and when that happens, the cost is going to increase. I was asked just last Thursday by the Arizona Border Counties Coalition what our options were as a county, as a border county. I told them, really, we cannot, that is a federal issue that we've been taking in our hands for the last 40 years, 50 years. Ever since the last time they passed immigration reform. And if you keep talking about it's a federal problem, but you keep handling it every time it happens, well, guess what? We keep handling it. It's a human problem that we can't have, people walking around the street. We do have a very good system. We took a tour of that system that Amanda has. She's got it handled pretty well. But with the numbers that we have, but if for any reason at all, it's started 2042, whatever, if for any reason at all, any part of that system breaks, we're going to be dealing with a major issue in our streets, the streets of Yuma, the streets of Somerton, the streets of San Luis. So putting in there, if you're not going, not say it like that, but if you're not going to fix this problem, at least figure out a way that we can tap into the resources that we need to pay. If we're going to end up doing it. Okay, so that's all I wanted to add. Just something a point along the bottom that says,
Mr. Supervisor Reyes, there's a couple of, I didn't want to be repetitive, but there's a couple of talking points on the second item on SCAP as far as costs.
Yeah, SCAP, yeah. Well,
yeah, I will have to work with several entities within Yuma County and the cities to figure out a direct cost and indirect cost before our next meeting to give you some real data. Now, agencies are barely coming up with,
Well, let me go a little bit deeper into that. When you have the sheriff go to a meeting with the federal senators, and he says, "I've had 61 deaths in the desert," or something like that, 80 or something. When he says that, I mean, there's obviously a cost to picking up his people. There's a cost to processing. It's a cost. He spends time. He spends officers. The coroner spends time. Spends officers, and that should be quantified. Because that is not something we should be dealing with. And the cost of all those actions should be borne by the federal government.
Search and rescue.
Search and rescue. I know that, well, okay. The answer that I gave the Arizona Borders Coalition is that we could keep screaming about it's a federal problem, it's a federal problem, it's a federal problem, and they could keep throwing policies at us. The problem is it's not changing much. And the problem is we're dealing with this anyway. Now we need to start quantifying and charging the federal government for dealing with it. I mean, state government isn't going to come and help anymore the way they used to. So guess what? The sheriff, they do send some money to pay overtime. They do send some money, but it was because of the pandemic. It wasn't because of the border flows. We need to start quantifying what it costs to deal with this and bail the federal government. I mean, I know SCAP. They send 6 cents on a dollar every once in a while, but at least they sent something.
I would be cautious and maybe because they might say, well,
you did it.
That's why you should be using PILT. So, which is
PILT is an argument that we make about we don't have any income taxes. It's about the residents. This one is a federal issue. PILT is a federal issue in terms of land use, land management.
But it's taxes which can be used for that, basically. They're going to tell you that you can use that money and we're paying it, and you should be using
Well,
it.
we shouldn't be
So-
arguing against ourselves, though.
No,
He gotta clean the expenditures and let them argue about it.
I'm just saying, we,
Well, if they answer
we,
that
we
way, we'll
need,
tell them, we'll
we
figure out
need,
a
we
way
need
to
to
tell
be careful. I think, with the SCAP, that's where it should be going, not,
Right.
not, immigration reform is, I'm personally, I think that's another totally,
It's a loser.
yeah, that just, so, it's.
Well, it never hurts to ask. Sometimes it hurts to ask.
Yeah.
I think PELT is an issue that a lot of Western states have nothing to do related to immigration. Colorado, New Mexico, most of the Western states, most of the open Western states, Nebraska, Nevada, all those states have PELT problems. Only Arizona, New Mexico, Texas, and California have this problem. So we can point to the fact that, hey, look, if you want us to spend the money on immigration, tell us. But PELT is not it's not a legislative act that defines what you're going to spend the money on. It's a legislation that simply says, because you have so much federal land, we're going to give you this money. That's it. I don't think they're ever going to get into immigration in that line because it's not an issue. Although Colorado and some of these places are starting to have, issues with immigration, I still don't think there's a really good way to tie that into immigration yet. And I think that what we need to do with the immigration issue is separate the cost. First and foremost, because we have no other option. We keep asking the government to respond, they respond. But the response is not necessarily solving the problem. So while that's going on, I'm sure the sheriff's spending money. I'm sure we spend, every time that Tony Padilla comes in here and gives us a report, that's time spent on that issue that we shouldn't be spending on. Every time we set up toilets on the border, we're dealing with an issue that is not an issue we should be dealing with. And I know it's a small issue, small cost, sort of like a small cost. But if you start quantifying what we spend, even the time we spend on it, you will realize just how much time we spend on immigration and how many times we say it's a federal problem, but we keep spending the time on immigration.
Mr. Chairman, just for clarification purposes, will this be data just from the county expenditures, not the cities, not any other agency or entity? It's just expenditures from the county, right?
I'd say that we go make that point. The cities need to make that point on their own. And if they want to do it together with us, well, it's fine, but we need to make the point. And to be honest with you, Mr. Chairman, we really haven't spent the millions or hundreds of thousands of dollars that other entities have had to put up, including the state. We haven't yet, but that's not to say we won't. And setting up a repayment process behooves us to do it earlier before we do have that big bill. And we're not quantifying that. Like I said, the sheriff is not giving us details on how many extra officers he's using, how many overtime hours he's got, how many people is he sending, how many calls is he taking because of some illegal immigration issues. The justice, what we're talking about with SCAP is the justice process, which is quantifiable because you identify people, whether they're in this country illegally or not. But the other problems, like deaths in the desert and stuff like that, we haven't done any quantification of that. We need to start doing it. Not for next month.
Okay, I was gonna say, the expectation is to have that in 2 weeks.
Information for next month. No, not for next month, but we need to do that.
And I think we kind of maybe have a conversation with the sheriff, but he can tell you also with that, what's that other program? With the border.
Yeah.
Stone Garden.
Yeah, he gives me
So
some.
that's, we get money for that. So it's a thing that they're gonna say, well, here, there's some money there that to kind of should be helping offsetting that. So, just, we
Well,
gotta
let's focus on
we gotta be cautious.
Let's focus on the toilet.
Anything else? Any other question on immigration reform?
Well, only one thing. Look, I know that it seems like a small thing, toilets, but it's a big thing for farmers. I mean, all it would take is one big scandal with one problem with the crop, one problem with lettuce, one problem with something. It will take one for it to become a major issue.
One E. coli
One E. coli
incident.
case.
Yeah.
So we've been extremely lucky. There was no good in this, but we've been extremely lucky that we haven't had an issue with that yet. And I think that we as a county have been extremely conservative in the way we have responded to this, but I think that whenever we have responded to it, we have responded in a conservative but very in focused way yet. We haven't really done anything that sets us apart as a.
No, I think we've done it, we've taken steps to prevent this, try to prevent this. So obviously, this is, and I think that's the way it should be. Either, I know that it's federal government deal, but if we don't take action, then we would be in a lot more trouble, I would say.
This is my way of making the meetings last longer, because when I was running them, it lasted a lot
He
longer. So let's
just,
go
he
back
just,
to
he
keeping
just,
the meetings
he just
short.
passed. I was looking at 9:30, 9:35, but 40% of the time of the meeting was. Thank you, Alejandro. Thank you.
Alejandro, go away.
We just
Just
shift
sit
the
down.
3-minute timer over in front of Tony, okay?
For next meeting, Alejandro can send us an email. He doesn't need to be present.
I'll see you in your office, man.
Thanks, Alejandro.
Thank you.
Between the health department and Alejandro, I think Tony has.
Mr. Chairman, can we get Supervisor Reyes's comments
What is the health
directly
department?
to Alejandro prior to the meeting? To be entered into the record?
Moving on to events and current events, or calendar events and current events. Lynn?
Oh, I'm sorry. I went to the governor's inauguration. I went to opening day at the legislature. Attended several meetings, and that's about all of.
Oh, my heavens, no way.
Yeah, I'm trying to hurry.
Mr. Chairman, I attended many of the same meetings that Lynn did.
Yeah.
Opening day, as well as a legislative forecast by the Arizona Chamber. And also hosted Ambassador Kelly Clark, the former ambassador to the United Nations, representing the U.S. And that was interesting to show her the border.
The border, you know that border.
Budget review team meeting. Also attended the Mohawk Irrigation District Draining Board meeting, which the rain's been nice, but it need a lot more. It's not hitting where it needs to right now. Numerous meetings and conversations referenced upcoming zoning changes in the foothills, and that's about it.
I'm going to stand on the report right now.
You used your time up.
You got 30 seconds.
I used to say that, right? I met with a group called the San Luis Vision Group, and we talked about issues that pertain to logistics in the border and how it's getting it's getting more and more unpredictable. I think a lot of people focus a lot on the immigration situation with the migrants and with the illegal situation, but the legal situation of crossing the border, it's also very important. And the people that live in the border are more focused into how to get through the border quicker and what's happening. So we had a meeting about that. I had a meeting with the mayor of San Luis, new mayor of San Luis, yesterday, a couple of hours to talk about issues that probably are important to have between us. And Lynn, when I asked you what time this thing started, and you told me 12 a.m., you were talking about the governors, I think. Well, I showed up late to that swearing-in ceremony because Brian
invited you.
Invited me, and he said anytime you get there, anytime before noon, we'll let you in. Then he sent me a flyer saying it starts at 5. So there's a lot of. He blamed you anyway.
Oh, he blamed me. Okay.
He said Lynn was talking about next week. So
yeah.
you were. And I parked at the CSA meeting without asking the CSA people because.
They extended the invitation for us to park there.
Yes, they do.
So they didn't do anything about it. I did notice, I was invited to that meeting with the 6 senators or 8 senators that came over. I was aware that Jonathan, Supervisor Lyons and Supervisor Porches were invited also. Did you ever post that meeting? Okay, well, then, good, I didn't go. So,
we weren't going to let you in.
But I was going to try to cut into Supervisor Lyons' presentations. I was told he dominated that meeting together, but
no.
Yeah. But,
just presenting.
It was just lucky that 3 of us didn't show up. So I guess what I'm getting at is in that area, particular area, we need to be cognizant of the fact that if any 3 of us are going to show up, we need to be posted in the agenda. In that particular.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
No, in that particular issue, I think it's important to remember that there's been a lot of delegations that have visited Yuma County over the last year and a half. We need to start focusing some of these policies and seeing where they can take us. But that would take another half hour, and I don't think I have much time. So that's it for me.
All right, thank you. Well, I attended the meeting with the senators. Tony Reyes wasn't there, Supervisor Reyes.
I heard that was mentioned. You lucky.
I also attended a meeting with Mayor Naya from Somerton and the city administrator, city administrator or city manager Luis Galaviz, and we talked about projects that they're looking at, and so how they'll take those same issues to DC when they're up there. So, and, you know, one of the things as Mr. Reyes mentioned about the when we get invited, sometimes we don't all know when three of us are invited. But I think as soon as we know or something, let Desiree know or Ian, and that way if it's still time to be posted, that so it be posted. But sometimes staff from the senators or from the Congress will send an invitation, not saying who else was invited, and but I do understand. So
Different staffers invited different people.
yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And sometimes just people are invite by themselves. So just
All I want to say about everything that the supervisor chairman here has mentioned is that I am certainly happy that the Somerton people are coming back to Somerton, because they've been in San Luis for a while. So
Go ahead, Ian.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Attended the City of Yuma swearing-in ceremony. I believe Alejandro was there as well, and maybe some others. GYEDC annual investor lunch, and Alejandro was also there, and another Alejandro meeting with Multiversity representatives. Also attended the first CSA Legislative Policy Committee meeting, County Managers Association meeting, and Arizona County's Insurance Pool meeting. Next week, I'll be attending the Arizona City County Management Association Winter Conference in Sedona. And I wanted to thank the safety staff and facilities management, and also Supervisor Pancrazzi for her input. You may have noticed there's a slight extension to the dais.
So I don't fall off.
So she doesn't fall off.
So she
So
don't
safety
fall off
first.
down
So
there,
thank you
yeah.
for safety team for recognizing that
Extended it
issue
out a
the
little
plan didn't work, did it?
and finding a quick solution.
Yeah, yes.
And that's it.
Mr. Chair, I have two more things. I attended the first CSA Legislative Policy meeting, and I got to judge the Gowan Science Academy's science fair, and I just had the best time. I wanted you to know that. I missed a whole bunch of things that day that I was supposed to go to because I was having so much fun judging the science fair that I didn't even look at my calendar, and so anyway, it was so fun to be back at a school and be back working with kids.
Yeah, I was waiting for you on the border.
I know, probably, huh? Yeah, you are, yeah. I really enjoyed judging the science fair, and the kids did a great job, and it was just really fun to be back in a school. So anyway, just thought I needed to add that.
We've stretched it to 2:30. We have achieved.
Oh, geez. Okay. So anyway, that's it.
All right. Anything else?
Oh, no, come on. We got 5 more minutes.
Motion adjourned.
Okay,
Approved.